Okay, so Martian Wind came about because I was mucking around with white noise through a bandpass filter, as you do. And, white noise on its own sounds a bit like wind. But if you run it through a bandpass filter, then the more narrow the band gets, the more it, the less frequencies get through. So you've got that, white noise in general, and then the bandpass filter, you're only letting, say, these specific frequencies get through around about this center point, the center point being the actual note. One of the things that, always fascinates me about sound is how really you can't really make a distinction between a frequency as in, that's a part of a sound, and frequency as in that's the note. It's just generally accepted that round about the lowest frequency is the fundamental frequency, the fundamental harmonic, and that's which note you're playing. But if you strongly emphasize a completely different frequency, that might kind of count as a note in its own right, which is kind of how oscillator sync works and how acid lines work, self-resonating filters. So, I'm fascinated by that kind of thing. So anyway, I took this white noise, ran it through a bandpass filter, and when you make it really quite narrow, the frequencies getting through, it starts sounding quite tonal and melodic. So I was just playing a simple harmony, D minor and A minor, so you get this kind of it's very kind of beautiful, desolate, sad, lonely kind of a sound. And I thought that was great, it sounds like wind through a cave almost, only it's, playing nice harmonies. Getting a bit too excited then. So, I just kind of took that idea and ran with it. And I was trying to make this kind of really desolate, lonely piece of music, and I think that worked quite well. I realised it needed some kind of, not quite a foundation, but, a bass line. Something that people could latch onto as being the kind of foundation of the song, so I went with this in the end. And it's got this other instrument that kind of almost talks to it, as in call and response. That's one of the instances of me plagiarising myself. I completely cannibalised that from an older track of mine, from an as of yet unreleased EP called the Underwater EP. I really like the music, but I thought, I've come a long way in production terms since then, so in the back of my mind, as a distant project at some point, I would like to completely redo that. But so far it's unreleased and I really like it, so I thought, okay, we'll use that as the bass and response to it, just so I won't actually have to do something right now that's original. I can just quickly take that and then I can concentrate on the sounds rather than the notes, because really this kind of music, I think, is the sounds is where the real creativity lies, and the notes are somewhat arbitrary. So that's what I went with for that, to start off with, but it sounded so nice, it just fit perfectly. I couldn't really picture it any other way, so I kept it that way. For those of you not familiar with call and response, I'm not sure if this is really the correct terminology, but it's basically like the instruments are talking to each other, having a conversation, which in general is how most music works, but a lot of the time it's kind of, they're repeating each other at the same time, so they're really emphasising a point. Call and response is more one instrument asks a question and the other one answers it. So an example I came up with myself once I first learned about this is the question and answer song, where I made up this little melody of I've got the question, and then this other instrument goes I've got the answer, and that's how I remember it anyway. And it's a nice little tune, so it's da 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 da. And if you play it on one instrument, it's just a kind of nice enough melody, and you can see, it kind of goes up a bit and leaves a bit of conflict unresolved, and then it goes back down again to where you started, so that's resolved and you've gone back home in the whole monomyth way of looking at it. But if you do it with two different instruments, it's like they're talking to each other, so one's asking the question and the other one's replying to it. And that's basically what I'm doing there with the bass line and the thing that applies to it. I'm not really sure what you call that instrument. Kind of fluty woodwind type sound, I guess. So to finish this track off, I added an acid line, and I added in a choir by Adam Fielding. The acid line is using the exact same trick in Hopper. I forget exactly how far it repeats. It's something like every bar and a half or something. But you know, it's not every bar, so it's not in sync with the main foundation. It falls in and out of sync. So yeah, it's the exact same trick again. If I just isolate the acid line and the doesn't really have drums, does it? It's got kind of heartbeat percussion. If I isolate the bass line and the acid line, you can hear how they fall out of sync with each other. So the acid line is repeating, I think, every 6 crotchets, and the bass line every 4 or 8, you know, if you look at it. So yeah, we've got 4/4 and we've got 6/4 at the same time, and I think that kind of thing really, you know, sounds interesting. Okay, so occasionally I've been accused of using presets, which I don't really usually do. Occasionally I use sample CDs, and one in particular I really liked, and I realised that all the patches in it that I liked were by the same person, Adam Fielding, who I gather is kind of quite a good up-and-coming musician in his own right. So I commissioned him to make a few samples for me, and they actually, well, I say samples, a few Thor patches for me. And they actually sound really good. This one in particular is, I think, the only part of the track where I didn't make the sound myself from scratch, except for an 808 kick drum making a kind of heartbeat sound. It's this ethereal, beautiful, otherworldly choir. It just gives me goosebumps listening to this, so I'll let you hear it in isolation. And then I introduce an octave up, the same kind of thing again. And again, I'm very used to doing block chords and just kind of join them in, and this is me trying to make a departure from that. You can see there's a little bit more interest there. It's not quite block chords, but it's close. You know, there's only really 2 chords here. We've got D minor and A minor. Let me check, I'm pretty sure that's it. Okay, so there are a few more chords, but the gist is it's mostly, you know, just very simple chords, and I'm just trying to kind of dance around them a bit and make it so it's not quite that simple. It's also nice to see how the patches work, because, you know, this is in Thor, you can actually see at a glance the whole entire patch. So you can see the kind of thing I do, very simple. You might have, like, you know, A filter and A oscillator. With a lot of my later stuff, 2 oscillators, because, you know, it sounds better, but any more than that I really can't tell much difference. But with Adam Fielding's choir, if I can find it, I mean, just look at this. It's like, it's so complicated. I don't know where to begin trying to work out what went through his mind as he made this. It's amazing. As far as I'm concerned, this is still pretty much the area of, and this is where magic happens. You know, my stuff is very simple. You can see exactly how it works. With this, it's very complicated, and I just think the guy's a genius. So yeah, that's a great sound, and I'm really thankful for it. Thanks, Adam.